All right, Bob. So, are you on a 24 week or 24 time a year payroll? So basically, you get paid in the middle of the month or in the last of the month, first and 15th, or like 15th and 30th. Or are you an every 2 week kind of guy? Like, so 26 paychecks a year.
No, I'm a 2 times a year. Wow, we're talking about work right out the gate.
The thoughts and opinions of Bob and Kevin
of the Bob and Kevin Show are exclusively the thoughts of
Bob and Kevin and not the thoughts of their employers.
Past, present, and probably not future.
2 times a month, right?
Yeah. Sorry, not 2 times a year, 2 times a month. Yes.
So I found this article. And I was thinking, I make X number of dollars, every paycheck. Feel pretty good about that. And then I was looking at the top 10 highest paid tech CEOs. It was from my Business Insider article.
Did you see my name on that list?
I didn't. And I didn't see mine on there either, but I don't believe either one of us qualify as CEOs. In our personal lives, maybe we're the chief everything officer, but not in our
I don't even know if I'm
lives.
the CEO of my life, so...
Oh, wow. So coming in at number 10 is the MasterCard CEO, Ajay Banga, 20.4 million. That's pretty good. Not bad.
That's weak. That's weak sauce.
Former Intuit CEO, Brad Smith, 21 big ones, 21 million.
So he makes 21 million and he's a former CEO?
Well, I imagine, it says he stepped down at the end of 2018. So this list must be a little laggy. I guess we don't know what you made in 2019 because it's still, I don't know, 2019.
How do they get this information, by the way?
Well, publicly traded companies, they disclose, I do believe. So a lot of these companies are
CEO
public.
salary. Yeah, I'm sure that's part of the board of directors report.
Yeah.
Yada, yada, yada.
The Cisco CEO, Chuck Robbins, because I knew you knew who the CEO of Cisco was. 21,
Nope, some rich dude.
21.3. These are all dudes. Not all of them are white though, but they're all dudes for sure. I was gonna do the stereotype, but my stereotype doesn't fit my narrative, Bob. Sorry, I just watched the impeachment madness. I was like, this is stupid. I'm a little angry, but I digress. Okay, on point. Number 7, former Accenture CEO Pierre not going to work here anymore. 22.3 million.
So former Accenture.
Yes.
Accenture is the company formerly known as... Oh, shoot. I can't remember.
And
anyway,
before you say anything about former, he passed away in January. Just want to put that out there quick. Yeah. So,
R.I.P. Skypoint.
Microsoft.
How much did he make? 20 what?
22.3.
I feel like there's a large collection right around that 20 to 22 range.
Well, we've got another one here. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, and I have no idea if I got that right. 25.8 million. So we're halfway through the list.
You're telling me the Microsoft CEO only makes 25 million?
Hey, it is staring at me in black or in FF and 000, or I messed that up, but in hex
you
colors.
You can't get to trace commas making 25 a year.
That reminds me, I need to get my HBO subscription going again because that's done, right? I'm assuming.
Well, I mean, yeah, all the episodes. No, actually, all the episodes are not out there. There's one more episode that comes this week. It's well worth it. It's so good.
Totally. All right. Salesforce at number 5. Co-CEO. I didn't know. Can you have co-CEOs? Apparently you can. Did you know this?
You can have anything.
Co-CEO Mark Benioff, 28.4 million. Adobe CEO Shantanu Nair.
So wait a second. I have a question.
Yes.
Based on co-CEO. So we have one of the co-CEOs on the top 10 list. Do we have the other one?
I don't think so. That's a good observation.
Well, that's a pretty
Wait a
deal
second.
That needs to be
Wait a second.
Somebody in that co-relationship is getting shafted.
Speaking of which, did you see Larry Page and Sergey Brin are kind of formerly, gosh, I can't talk today, formerly like off of the Alphabet payrolls, I guess, right?
Did they resign or did they resign?
Let's ask AI and give it no context, and then we still won't know.
Flashback to the previous episode. Check it out if you haven't already.
So apparently they're just board members now. And apparently the article I was reading called them the absentee CEO, Larry Page, because apparently he's got that. They've sent him to the roof of Hooli, and he's just hanging out
there. The roof or the basement?
Whatever. But, Hooli and Google, apparently they have that in common. Anyway, I digress. Adobe CEO Shantanu Narayan, $28.4 million. Wow, that was tough to say.
Terrible public speaker, by the way.
So
every year at Adobe Max, I'm just like, whoa.
So I'm actually using... I got rid of my Adobe. I know you probably can't because maybe the work's providing it or whatever. But in my personal life, I totally ditched Adobe, all of the products.
Well, Kevin, since I work as part of a team, we utilize a lot of their cloud sharing features. So
gotcha. Well,
anyway, what number are we up to anyway?
We're on number
Adobe?
4.
And he is where?
$28.4 million. But you know what? He's going to lose money because I ditched Adobe. So he's going to be at $28.39 million.
So we have broken into the top 5 and we still haven't eclipsed $30 million.
Yeah, and there's going to be a few notable people not on this list. You're going to be like, what? Where's so-and-so? So
yeah, the Adobe guy doesn't shock me.
Number 3.
Salesforce doesn't shock me.
Number 3 for and the winner of companies I've never heard of.
Wait. Did we skip number 4?
No, number 4 was Adobe. Number 4.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Number 3, the award for a company you've never heard of, DXC Technology. Have you ever heard of that?
The letter D, the letter X, the letter C?
That is correct.
Nope.
Well,
does it stand for something?
I have no idea. It's probably worth a Google, but the CEO's name is Mike Lowry, and he made $32.2 million. So apparently they're pulling in some cheddar, right? And he's taking home a lot. I can see Bob Googling. I'm going to do the play-by-play. Bob has pushed the D button, the XC.
I'm trying to, but my keyboard is not responding.
Oh, my gosh.
I
would say you call yourself a programmer in a very, talking down to you, but you'd be like, no, I don't. So I'm not even going to go in that direction.
I had some major confession I was going to make about imposter syndrome this week's episode, but I can't remember what it was. So, so we're down to number 2 now. Number 3 was DXC. Wow.
Yeah, whatever the heck that is, but they're making bank apparently. Number 2, PayPal CEO Daniel Schulman, 38.8 million big ones. There you go. PayPal.
These numbers are awfully low still. I feel like.
I'm about to change that at number 1.
Just number one guy, though?
Number 1 is more than double number 2.
Is it Tapple? Is Tapple number 1?
Nope. It is Oracle CEO Mark Hurd, $108.3 million. Now.
Yeah, that guy's the devil. Wait,
Oracle,
is there not a single woman on that list?
There's not a single woman on this list. There's also not a single social media company on this list.
So Jack's not. Well, how is Mark not on there? Mark's giving all of his money away.
Doesn't Mark take $1, right? He does the whole dollar thing, and then he just he uses the company card to swipe the company card at home for everything else.
I wonder if Tapple does that too, because
I think so.
Tim Cook's got to be up there, right?
The YouTube CEO, I forget her name, but she's not on this list. I don't see anyone from Yahoo on this list, if they're still around, or IBM. Remember how I was saying, what about IBM?
Yes.
Where are they? I don't see them on this list. I don't see any Google execs on here because
help me out again. What is the name of this list?
I'll send you the link. Top 10 highest paid tech CEOs.
CEOs.
Yes.
God, you would think that Zuckerberg. Well, what about Bezos? Bezos isn't considered tech?
Well, no, actually, Bezos, you want to guess how much he actually makes per year?
Obviously, it's under 20 million.
It's under 100,000. It's $88,000 a year. It's 88,240, I believe, is what I read. Something like very
salary.
Specific. Yes,
that's his salary. What's his bonus though?
So he makes that, and then he basically has like a $10 million travel budget, and and he gets stock. He's the richest man in the world. But to your point, I think you brought up, aren't a lot of these people billionaires or tres comas on paper only? And the answer is yes, right?
Yes.
They're doing
wow,
okay.
That didn't help with my anger problem today.
Well,
that's for sure.
This won't help you either, Bob, because a lot of times we're like, hey, that's, I bring in X per month. So if I
love this X dollars. Yes.
Yeah, X dollars.
We both make X dollars.
So most of these people are like 20 million and over, right? And then somebody's like 100 million. But let me say, hey, Bob, after taxes, I'm going to give you $1 million salary.
Not that it matters, but I'm much richer.
Do you want to venture guess, just playing with fun numbers, how much is that take home per paycheck? If you made $1 million.
So
I'm saying after taxes.
After taxes.
Yeah. After taxes, you make $1 million a year. What does that work out for 24 paychecks per paycheck?
$35,000 a paycheck.
Right. So $41,666. You got it right on, Bob.
I was close.
You were actually very close. Closer than I would have got. I'm using a calculator here. So could you imagine
just using logic?
Could you imagine $41,000 paycheck every,
15 days.
I guess couple weeks, right? So how amazing is that, right?
Yeah, but with big money becomes big money problems. I mean, you got to have the Tesla and the backup Tesla and maybe a jet. I think what I've learned growing through my career is no matter how little or how much you make, you find a way to almost spend it all. I don't know if you've experienced the same.
Of course. The more you make, the more you spend.
Hey, do me a favor. Reference back to your list again. Who's the guy from DXC Technology? Was it Mike Salvino?
DXC is Mike Lawrie. Lawrie.
Because I see a DXC Technology in Denver.
Really? I see.
I just find it hard to believe that one of the richest dudes in tech is in Denver.
Denver's pretty happening. What's wrong with Denver?
Yeah, all right, I guess it is. I just figured it was just oh wait, John Michael Lawrie, right?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So that it is the right company. Wow.
Well, I'm on dxc.technology. Ooh, that's very hip. It's a top-level domain that ends in .technology.
Ooh. That is, yeah, that's the one that I was looking at. Okay.
All right.
So
I just scrolled through their page. I have no idea what they do, but apparently they make a lot of bank. All right. Sounds good.
yeah, they're like enterprise tech. It's weird.
See?
Okay.
Where's IBM on this list?
Well, apparently IBM is gone.
All
as
right.
we discussed last time.
Speaking of gone, Black Friday, Cyber Monday have both come and gone. Did you find anything cool?
You know what? It wasn't even a blip on my radar this year. Not gonna lie. Didn't look for any specials. Didn't buy anything.
Yep. Same here. Same here.
I guess that's a sign that I'm a spoiled brat because I'll just buy what I want when I want it and not worry about the measly couple bucks off.
I found it super lackluster, but maybe I just have too much crap and I've finally saturated all my needs in once, right?
But did you take a look at what was some of the offerings were? Because I didn't even peek.
Not really. I just didn't have a need. So, and every time Black Friday and Cyber Monday come along, it's hazardous to my bank account. And I just decided to shield my bank account this year, I do believe.
Yeah, I usually like to buy little, because I think even a couple years ago when we started doing this, one of our first days, I think our very first episode was right after Black Friday, right?
It was. So this time of year is a little bit sentimental for me because it means a Bob and Kevin show birthday, which we don't really do anything. So
yeah, that's weird. So I guess we missed it. But yeah, episode 1, we talked about Black Friday And we did actually get some stuff that year, or talked about some stuff at least.
Yep.
But this year we did not.
In fact,
look.
I got an air fryer that year. And second fact, I used it last night.
Wow, you've had an air fryer for 2 years?
That's right, Bob.
You
2
are
years.
a trendy
That's
motherfucker.
Right. I eat unhealthy fried foods like the best of them. That's right.
So would it be cool if air fryer was a sponsor of the show?
It would be great, except I have an off-brand one. So
That was the next question I was going to ask. Is air fryer an actual brand?
I have no idea. I got some Chinese model, I'm sure, that I got it on deal.
Do you also have an instant pot or some kind of pressure cooker?
I don't, because I was like, water cooler talking 2 years ago. I'm like, hey, I got an air fryer. And my boss is like, oh, I got an Instapot. And everyone's like, oh, tell us about the Instapot. I'm like, nobody cares about my air fryer.
Stole your air fryer thunder.
Exactly. So for that reason, I refused to buy a Instapot.
Well, the point that where I was going with that is now they have Instant Pot air fryer combo units.
So high pressure greasy food is what I'm imagining, right?
Well, I don't think they operate simultaneously.
Okay.
I think you can use it for an air fryer or a pressure cooker.
Okay. All right.
Not a high pressure air fryer.
Yeah.
Although that's intriguing.
Yeah. I don't even know what you would make with such a thing, but apparently something.
Well, since you brought up Black Friday and Cyber Monday, I guess we can look a little bit into the future toward the Christmas holiday season. Do you have any technology stuff on the radar for you or the family from a technological standpoint?
So, interestingly enough, we have a white elephant that we do every year, and typically a white elephant can be anything from jokester, prankster gift to practical. We're on the practical side of things, and so much so that I buy something that if I get stuck with, that I'm gonna be okay with that, because we do like this round robin and you can steal gifts. It's just like this weird thing.
So it's not really a white elephant, because the definition of white elephant is pretty much piece of shit that you can't do anything with.
That's correct. That's why I had to disclaim it's not really a white elephant, but everyone calls it a white elephant. But I'm not sure that they know that it's not a white elephant. But I'm not organizing this every year. But I digress.
I do think there is a name for the one that you like trade for, and people like get good stuff through that one. I don't know.
Well, whatever that is what we do. And I just purchased a coffee warmer, because one of my biggest pet peeves is you pour a cup of coffee, you do the work, or you get distracted, and then you come back to said cup of coffee or tea, and it is now room temperature. That is unsatisfactory. So
I think that's just because you're a quitter, man. You got to just drink that. You got to drink it while it's hot.
There's only so much you can chug. So one party foul would be to take it to the microwave, a crime I commit often.
Well, I was going to say, isn't that what a coffee warmer is, a microwave?
No, it's a heating pad, for lack of a better term. It's basically a coaster that you plug in, and then it warms from the bottom. And
hot plate.
It's basically a hot plate, but it's marketed as a coffee warmer because when you put the cup down, it uses the weight of the cup to push a button underneath to say, turn on, something is sitting on me, and then it warms it up, allegedly. I'm just going totally off what Amazon has told me. I haven't actually used one of these. And then when you pull the cup off, it turns off, and it doesn't waste energy, and hopefully doesn't burn down my house. So that's
a nice feature.
Yeah. What about you, Bob? Anything got your eyes on?
You know what? This holiday season is not, I wouldn't say sneaking up on you, but kind of like, if someone shoots you with a sniper rifle from a far distance away, you don't really know what's coming. And that's kind of what the holidays are for, like me right now.
Well, we have 6 less days this year because Thanksgiving fell on the later side of when it can fall. So we actually have 6 less shopping days this year. And you only have one more paycheck before the big day, Bob.
I did see that you tweeted about that. Luckily, with our family, it's pretty funny that you brought the paycheck thing back. With our family, we don't do a big to-do for Christmas. So I think we decided as a family this year, if we were going to get anything, we were going to get gifts for a potential guest coming to visit our house. Like, that's the plan. So snowshoes was on the list. So if a guest comes and it's snowshoe weather, we should have a pair of snowshoes for a guest. So like that kind of stuff.
All right. So you're buying a gift for a potential placeholder person who might come to your house.
Yeah.
So this is kind of interesting. It's kind of like Homer Simpson buying a bowling ball from Mars that says Homer on it, right? Because you're like, really, this is for us, Well,
not really. It's so we can enjoy an activity with our guest, because like we're all kitted out.
Oh,
like we have snowshoes.
Okay, so this isn't like the only set of snowshoes. This is the extra set.
No, this is totally the extra. So the extra set of snowshoes, the extra set of poles, the extra set of, like anything that we'd use for hiking. Like we have a guest backpack, we have guest water bottles, stuff like that. So.
Damn, it's pretty well thought out there, Bob.
Well, we're trying. And now that it's snowy and icy a little bit here, we're going to get guest yak tracks as well.
You are listening to the Bob and Kevin Show with Bob Beattybar
and Kevin Giescheski. Each week we cover relevant tech and social issues related to technology.
Our website is bobandkevin.show.
And our episodes can be found virtually on any podcast network.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Just search for Bob and Kevin Show.
When you go out to the middle of nowhere and you're hiking, do you have internet access out there, Bob?
You know what? Remarkably, I would say so far 95% of the time we do. But there are weird pockets where, and it's probably when you would need it most that we don't.
What about when you went to Utah? Because it was Utah you went to, and you got those you stayed at those huts. Was that correct? In Moab.
Yeah, that coverage was actually way better than we anticipated.
What?
Yeah. Cell signal is pretty prolific, wouldn't you say?
Apparently not here. I just had to switch off my Wi-Fi back to my shitty hardline for this podcast.
But your Wi-Fi might be spotty, like from your ISP, but your cell signal is what you're using as your bandwidth right now, right?
Yeah, I suppose you're right. But
we've had pretty good luck. Now, we're not all on the same network.
Okay.
So some of us are on AT&T and some of us are on Verizon. And that typically, I feel like that helps us.
You're on Verizon, right?
I am on Verizon.
Did you take advantage of that free Disney Plus?
I wasn't aware that that was a perk of being on Verizon. I should investigate that for my work.
Bob, I would also encourage you to listen to the former episodes of the Bob and Kevin Show where we discuss this.
I guess I didn't put two and two together. I thought for some reason I took it as being part of your Dish network, not Verizon.
No. It's Verizon. So Verizon customers 1 free year. Boom.
Oh, I'm a shitty listener. I've been exposed.
So Moab wasn't bad. It's not so bad around Boulder, but there are parts where you go west of the Mississippi where the little Verizon map, the Sprint map, the T-Mobile map gets a little sketchy, right?
Yeah, there's no color in there. It's a little gray.
Yeah, and they tend to follow highways, right, and migrate towards populated areas. And
yeah,
when you go out on the ocean, let's say you were out on the ocean on a boat, you would have a hard time hitting the cell tower, several miles offshore, right?
You know what? I haven't been on a cruise yet. I should ask my sister what that's like because they cruise all the time. I wonder what internet access is like on those big boats.
Well, it's Wi-Fi and they have a satellite uplink and airplanes.
Do you think they have a dedicated satellite? Like the cruise line has a satellite?
Oh, no way. They're too expensive. No, we'll cover that in a minute.
I was going to say, or are they?
Imagine an airplane. You're flying on an airplane, and I'm not talking like a United or American or British Airways. You have a little Cessna flying around somewhere. You're not going to have cell tower signal very good there, right?
No, I think they just rely on their radio.
Wouldn't it be great, Bob, if there were such a constellation of low orbit satellites where it might make all these problems go away?
Why, yes, Kevin, I think it would be amazing. Is there such a thing?
Yes, I will tell you more, Bob. There's this thing. It's
the worst setup ever.
Starlink, which is run by SpaceX and therefore run by Mr. Elon Musk. Have you ever heard of Mr. Musk?
Yes, but also not on the list of top 10 tech paychecks.
Yeah, him. I don't see Gary V either. What? Okay. Apparently you're not crushing it, are you, Gary? Okay. Moving on. So, Bob, would you do us the distinct honor of possibly reading from a well-traveled resource such as, I don't know, Wikipedia, and tell us a little more about Starlink?
This is usually your job, but from Wikipedia, Starlink is a satellite constellation being constructed by American company SpaceX to provide satellite internet access. The constellation will consist of thousands of mass-produced small satellites working in combination with ground transceivers. SpaceX also plans to sell some of the satellites for military, scientific, or exploratory purposes.
That sounds amazing, Bob. Thank you for reading that.
I don't know how amazing it sounds. It just sounds like a bunch of garbage going into space.
All right. I have an outline here. You're getting ahead here.
Oh,
so,
sorry. I'm not privy to your outline.
Because you're correct. There is a bunch of garbage that's going to go up there. So, what is it? So, Starlink is going to be a mesh network of satellites that are up in the sky, and they promise to bring basically global connectivity to the inhabitants of Earth. I saw this really cool video that I will...
Well, now when you say is going to be, you make it sound like there's a potential for vaporware here. There are already 6,000 of these bad boys in orbit, right?
Wrong. 122.
Oh, I thought they had done their... No, that's right. They did their 60... It was 60 some in the batch, right?
So 60 went up like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And then the first 60, I think, went up in May. So...
and they had 2 already up there, their test 2, correct?
Yeah, so the end state is there's going to be this global mesh around planet Earth, and it promises to basically bring internet to all on Earth. I guess so long as you can fork up the money as far as it bringing it to all. But it's going to eventually top out at how many satellites, Bob?
It looks like there's an outward potential of up to 42,000.
Yes, which, holy shit.
Because they keep asking for more, right?
Yes. And I had engaged a colleague of mine, a friend of ours, Kyle.
Friend of the show.
And he sent me a few articles on, Starlink and whatnot. And if they're going to do eventually 42,000 satellites, Bob, you want to guess how many have ever been launched since 1957?
Oh, it's got to be way, way, way south of that.
Pick a number. You're good at guessing.
I'm going to guess to date. So we're saying satellites to date, not including this Starlink expedition, correct?
Plus or minus the number that, yeah, exactly. I'll give you close counts.
I'm going to go 315.
You are way off if Kyle's correct. He's reporting 8,950 have been launched since 1957.
Ah, well, that's way higher than I anticipated. So, all right. So, but how many of those are still out there? Do we know?
No, but that's one of the problems we'll talk about the good and the bad, about what do you do with the satellite once you get it up there, right?
Well, can I jump in here too and say that Elon's not the only one that wants to do this either?
Who else is in on it, Bob?
Well, Bezos, Amazon wants to bring broadband to everyone via satellites, and I think they have a clearance for thousands of satellites to be deployed as well. And I think there's a couple other companies that want to get in the game as well. So it's not just Elon's space junk that's going to be out there.
That is interesting. So let's talk about a bit about how it works. We'll talk about the good, and then we'll talk about the bad. And if that's okay, as far as an agreed plan here, Congressman.
Yeah, I'm sure we're gonna intermingle good and bad throughout the whole thing. Are we gonna start with even how they get out there?
On a rocket. Right?
Yes, but they get out there on SpaceX reusable rockets.
Right. And I think the one that sent up the last 60 has been reused 4 times now, which is quite remarkable, right? So
yeah, their economy of scale with the pricing that they're getting on putting these into orbit is insane because, historically, think about one of those big, the giant communication satellites, how expensive it is to launch that one. And actually the actual per unit cost of that one giant satellite versus they've brought the price down on the Starlink ones like immensely. It's just, you hate to say cheap when you're talking about millions and billions of dollars, but really it is cheap.
So they planned it like the first phase of this is 12,000, but they don't need all 12,000 to come online. I believe they only need 1,600.
Yeah, the first placement that they're going for is 1,600 in a 550 kilometers, about 340 miles above the Earth.
So let's take a step back and talk about how does satellite communications currently work without Starlink. So if you want to send a message from the United States over using satellites to Europe, Bob, you're going to point a dish to the sky. You're going to bounce it off a satellite that is geostationary, which means it's hovering over the equator at 22,500 miles above the equator.
Yeah, they're way the hell up there.
And because the Earth wobbles a little bit, called precession, it actually draws a figure 8 in the sky, and your satellite dish has to account for that. But you're going to beam that up there, and then the satellite simply beams it back to Earth. However, it beams it back into its entire footprint of Earth. So as long as you're anywhere in that footprint, you're good to go. So when you beam it up from, say, New York City to the satellite, it doesn't find Paris because that's where your intended destination is and beam it at Paris. It just beams it at whatever it can see as far as Earth goes. It's a circle. So how many satellites, Bob, does it take for you to cover the entire Earth, not counting the poles, North and South Pole, because they're actually kind of hard to get?
So you have an answer for this, I'm hoping?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't.
Okay. What is your guess?
My guess is going to be somewhere around 1,600.
Well, the question, let me restate, is what's the minimum number of satellites to cover all of Earth in our current geosynchronous satellites that are at 22,500 miles away? How many do you need?
Oh, so the ones that are at the equator right now.
Yes.
They could probably get away with like fewer than 100.
The answer is 3. So in order to cover...
So I was correct, fewer than 100.
Yes, you are 100% correct, Bob. This isn't Price is Right. Pick a number without going over. So it's 3. So with 3 satellites at 22,500 miles away from Earth, you can cover most of all of the surface of Earth. But Bob, when I send something 22,500 miles away, even at the speed of light, what happens?
It's super laggy, isn't it?
Yes, latent. In fact,
latency. Sorry.
When I was latency, same diff. So when I was in Iraq doing the Iraq thing, and I wanted to correspond with my wife, we used satellites to use the internet, and so also with the phone calls. So I'm sure you've seen on television where the reporter and the interviewer, or the two people talking, just kind of get out of sync and they start stepping on each other's words and whatnot. That's because of the latency. In fact, it takes 250 milliseconds to go from New York up to the satellite, and then from the satellite back down to Earth in its footprint takes another 250 milliseconds. So the latency is about 500
So half a
milliseconds.
second.
Exactly.
Which is half a second, right? Okay.
Yes, exactly. And it doesn't sound like a lot, half second, but boy, you can sure perceive that. Once you start communicating over a satellite like that, it really sucks. So if you're going to play a video game and you're going to use satellite internet, good luck. It's not going to be
and
fun.
That's like optimal latency too, right? The half second, like that's an optimal condition.
That is an optimistic 500 milliseconds, right? Because even at the speed of light, it takes a while to get to that satellite and back. It takes 8 minutes for light to leave the surface of the sun to hit Earth. That's how far away it is. So,
and they use that distance. Like the reason why those satellites are so high in orbit is so they can cover a greater cone.
Ding, ding, ding,
down,
ding, ding.
right?
So the farther away you go, the less satellites you need, but you're giving up latency. The closer you bring these satellites in, guess what you can't do? You can't see as much. So the International Space Station is actually pretty low. So if you ever watch the cameras there and you don't subscribe to the fact that they're fake because you're a flat earther, which I know you're not, and I'm not. And yes, I got a new jab in there on flat earthers. They can't see very far because they're low orbit. And that is what Starlink is going to do. They're going to have a large network. And so because of the large network, they're going to have a bunch of these, and they can be low Earth orbit, and the latency is very low. In fact, I think the altitude here is 340 miles. So
yep,
a lot shorter. And one of the
they're actually boasting latency that is actually faster than the fiber that goes from New York to London, like that crosses the Atlantic. There's a fiber pipe, and Starlink is boasting better latency than that.
So let's return to the 3 satellite model at 22,500 miles up. One thing that they have trouble doing is satellite to satellite communications because there's only so much bandwidth between the satellites. So one of the restrictions we had in the military using satellites is there's only so much bandwidth that satellite can account for. You can't have unlimited gigabits. You have to say, okay, you get 10, you can have 10. Here's your uplink, here's your downlink. And once we run out of frequency space, guess what? We're out of bandwidth. And so you can only go satellite to satellite communications in only so much. And in fact, I don't even know if the current model allows for that. The reason I bring this up is because one of the hallmark features of Starlink is each one of these 12,000 or 42,000 nodes can talk to a neighbor. So imagine the routing.
4 lasers, right?
Right. So imagine your signal leaves New York, goes to the sky, hits the thing right over you in orbit, but rather than come right back down, which is also a small footprint, meaning you could only maybe communicate with 3 states because the footprint's so small because of the orbit. But now Starlink can actually send your signal in orbit to other nodes, and it can trace out the best path to get to, say, South Africa from New York or London, and they can take different paths. And there's a really cool video on YouTube. Well, I'm sure we'll link to it in the show notes.
The video's insane.
The guy is really dry, but it's like, oh, wow, this is really cool. But that's basically how it works. Now, Bob, you mentioned DirecTV earlier incorrectly when mentioning Disney Plus. I'm just going to keep jabbing all night here. Ow. Satellite communications use a certain wavelength for their signal. In the military, we had X-band, which is a certain wavelength. But commercial satellites all use something called KU and KA band. It's basically how big is the frequency, how big is the wave? Because what a lot of people don't realize is satellite communications is actually analog communications. And then we do a digital to analog conversion with a modem, modulate, demodulate. But, Bob, what happens when it rains with satellite television?
Apparently it sucks.
Because the raindrop, typical water vapor, is actually the size of KU and KA band. I can't remember which one it's more like. So you actually have weather problems with Starlink. So when clouds come over, it starts raining where you're at, you're going to have issues with Starlink. Now, I know I'm kind of getting ahead with the cons and whatnot.
See, I thought that was more to do with the dish, the receiver, than anything. That's pretty funny.
Well, you're shooting radiation. That's what satellite communication is. You're radiating an analog signal to outer space. Now, in order to penetrate different layers of the atmosphere, you have to find a frequency that doesn't just reflect back down, because back in the day, ham radio operators, what do they get to do, Bob?
Don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, if you can actually go a really long distance with a ham radio, because the frequency that a ham radio does bounces off the atmosphere and comes back down. So it's actually using the sky as a satellite, right? So if I transmit to the east,
that's still technically that's terrestrial, though, right? That's still terrestrial.
Yeah, but
okay.
I don't know that the word satellite means extraterrestrial, but anyway, same concept where you're bouncing off something, right? So ham radio is going to bounce.
But you're using the ionosphere to do the work.
Right, exactly. So you can bounce it there. How a satellite just takes it up out of the atmosphere and shoots it back down. So that's really all a satellite does. So, first off, being a rural person and having all kinds of internet issues all the time here, as you know firsthand, because we had issues earlier in this podcast, this is appealing to me. So I saw an article, and I think they were looking at about $80 a month for internet. That's about what I'm paying now.
The only research that I've seen is that they're speculating that that's what they were saying. On average, most people will pay $80 a month for their broadband. I don't think Starlink, SpaceX, any of them have come out with any pricing models yet at all.
Well, yes, I believe you. However, $80, there's going to be an $80 plan. It might get you 1 megabit, but there'll be an $80 plan, right? And I think the real trouble is what is the max capacity of Starlink, right? So as we were talking about bandwidth earlier, yes, there's a bunch of nodes up there, but let's say you live in New York City, high concentration of people, you're only going to have so much bandwidth above you in orbit at any point in time, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not going to be a replacement that everyone's going to use. I mean, every internet service provider has that bandwidth restriction.
Yeah, but I can lay more fiber much more readily than I can, say, I don't know, throw up 12,000 new satellites in a new shell around a planet, right? One's cheaper than the other.
At this moment in time, maybe.
Allegedly. So who do you think this is for, I guess? They mentioned military, I think civilian and scientific or experimental use, but who do you think this is primarily for? Or is this just Elon Musk ego stroke?
One of the videos that I watched, and it was specifically talking about the latency between the transatlantic cable and something like a Starlink with the ability to actually have better latency to this. The speculation is that they have a tailored sale to financial services industries. They were specifically talking about international trading and them having to rely on that fiber optic cable underneath the ocean. And if this offers a better speed, then he can actually sell dedicated bandwidth to financial institutions, and he'll be able to pretty much set his price, because financial institutions are the ones that paid tens of billions of dollars to the transatlantic fiber.
Well, you're older than me, and you can probably remember the pricing better. But back in the day, you could get a T1 line to your house, right? A T1 line for the uninitiated is the old analog phone system sold. Basically bandwidth and I think they're like DSOs or something. It's really getting old now, but it was the old analog switch network that they could use for internet. It was like when internet was brand newish, but T1 line got you like 1 megabit or something ridiculous for like $10,000 a month. It was just stupid. So I imagine Starlink will be expensive, especially around or in the first few rounds for sure.
Well, but I think that part of what his model is going to be is that he can use those big players like financial services to almost subsidize it. And I think that's why they haven't come out with any individual pricing. They don't even have finalization for the receivers yet. Like, they don't know how much they're going to cost. They don't know the exact design of them yet. All that's still in flux.
Speaking of design, I'm looking here on the article here. Version 0.9 of Starlink, the 60 initial satellites that launched in May 2019, weigh 500 pounds apiece. So hopefully, I'd have to check the altitude of International Space Station, but I'm assuming they're on different orbits, as far as elevation. But having 12,000 up to 42,500 pound objects just whizzing around. Bob, do you know what the typical or what the orbital velocity of an object needs to be in order to stay in orbit around Earth?
Not off the top of my head.
17,000 miles an hour. So,
and they're going to stay in perfect sync too, which is crazy. I don't buy that for 1 minute because Bob, ask me why. Why?
Because the Air Force currently runs most of the U.S. satellites, and one of their jobs to do, which is the Air Force Space Command, which President Trump wants to break off into their own thing. Space Command, what they do is they do burns on satellites to keep them in the correct orbit, and that takes fuel and it's expensive. And once you run out of fuel, you're not making any adjustments at this point. So I want to know how much fuel is on each one to do this, right?
Interesting that you brought that up. So two things. One thing is they're interfacing with the existing technology that we have that monitors all the stuff that's in space, the anti-collision. There's an anti-collision detector technology that Elon's subscribed to. But they're using like an ionic propulsion system.
Yeah, it's called the Hall effect thruster. It's a type of ion
Krypton.
thruster.
They're using krypton.
Yeah, it uses krypton, which sounds totally ripped from the headlines of a movie or sci-fi thing, right?
Well, the reason why they're using krypton versus the other element is because it's much more readily available and cheaper. But apparently it gives them a very long fuel cell life, the way that they're doing this.
Which is great, but it's probably still limited, right? In terms of how long it'll last and all that.
It is limited, and they were talking about how with the patents or with the government paperwork they had to file, they had to talk about the burn, like how much of the object will burn up when it does come out of orbit. And they're pretty sure that pretty much everything but the actual chamber that holds the ions or the krypton will pretty much entirely burn up.
So I hate to be that unlucky person that has one come through their roof, right?
Yeah, I don't remember what they said the size was actually on the container, but it didn't seem giant.
If it were the size of a penny, ouch. It's going to go right through you, right?
Right.
All right. So
yeah, because the housing for the propulsion has some crazy, like it's heat resistant. I can't remember what the number was. It was in the thousands of degrees. Might have been hundreds of thousands of degrees. I don't know.
So according to the article, the satellites also have a Department of Defense provided debris data avoidance collision system on board. So it's like ducking and dodging automatically. And that's another thing that Space Command does is they track every piece of garbage and junk in orbit. So apparently there's some sort of autonomous way to avoid colliding with things, which sounds pretty cool. I realize space is big, but if a 500-pound thing coming at you, there's gonna be 42,500-pound things up there, which sounds like ridiculously crazy. All right, so
no, it's totally. I mean, if you just look at that one video, just his satellites alone, obviously they're going to be on a different plane, but that basically saturates that layer.
Oh, right. Imagine trying to leave orbit, going to the moon, going to Mars. You now have to account for a window of opportunity. And I get, space is big, Kevin.
But those windows are going to be tiny with that much stuff out there.
Well, I don't know how big they'll be, but I know they'll be smaller. That's all I can know for sure. I don't know what they are, but they're going to be smaller.
One of the videos that I watched the other day was talking about the different trajectories that each of the satellites would be on, and the initial scheme that they are working with an estimated number, in the thousands, that their closest point, they would come within 45 kilometers of each other, which is a tiny, like if you're trying to shoot an object out into space, that's like threading a needle.
Yeah.
But with their reconfigured, I think that they're keeping it above 100 kilometers, like 110, but still.
So
that's awfully tight.
So the first 60, also known as 0.9, I'm reading here, 95% of the components are designed to burn up quickly, but the 60 that went out November 2019, 100% are designed to burn up, and they're a little heavier, and they have reduced albedo. That's not your libido, but your albedo. So I had to click on that one. That's the reflectivity of the satellites. Because why, Bob? Why does the reflectivity of it matter?
Well, I think optical is part of it. I mean, if you look up in the sky and you see 12,000 stars twinkling back at you at a low altitude, that's probably not great.
So according to this, and I've seen the complaints on Twitter, and I've seen some tweets that showed long exposure where the current 120 are messing up long exposure astronomy. So astronomers are claiming, apparently, that the number of visible satellites will outnumber the number of visible stars in brightness in both optical and radio wavelengths, severely impacting scientific observations. Could you imagine looking up in the sky and going, we're just under this mesh network of things, like going in very geometric, paths above us? How crazy is that going to be?
Well, I did see video where you could, when they launched the first batch of 60, that you could see them fan out from the launch.
Wow.
So
have you ever seen the space station fly over? You can get a little app that tells you when it's going to fly over. And have you ever gone outside?
It's actually, if you're in a low light enough area, it's actually really easy to find because it's just cooking in a straight line.
Yeah. And one of the cool things is it will come into view. Like the brightness will go from, I can't see it, to, oh my gosh, it's bright. And then it will dim completely out. And the reason that is because the best viewing is right after dusk, because at altitude, the space station catches a glimmer of the sun, which is in a different light plane. So it'll look like it's nothing. It'll come super bright, fly over, and then go away. And it's really cool. The magnitude really changes a lot. So we're going to have, once all these are up there, some really wicked sky events, if you will. You think there's a lot of crazy UFO people now. Just wait till you see this like strange, like patterns of light in the sky, and there's just going to be all these people that are just going to flip out. What do you think?
I do want to challenge a little bit of the scientific research argument, like that it will, make it hard to do that. When you, like with a pair of binoculars, let's say, and there's tree branches that are close by, you can actually focus past them. So yeah, the naked eye for looking at stars might get jacked up, but I highly doubt our research equipment, optical space viewing equipment is going to be impacted by that.
Well, Bob, according to this article here, on November 18th, 2019, a Chilean observatory observations were interrupted by SpaceX's satellite train consisting of 60 Starlink satellites. I've seen a few on Twitter where it literally, you can, this was from our telescope and this is how it got ruined. And it just shows like the light trails going through there. Now,
now, was that on launch day though?
No, I don't know. I don't have the context.
Because like I said, I did see videos where you could actually, there were great videos because when they release them from the payload section, there's no propulsion involved. They basically open the door and they rotate the actual SpaceX rocket, and they just naturally fall out. And then they, because of that roll maneuver, there's some push behind them, and then they wait till they get separated away from each other, and then they turn on the propulsion. So when there's 60 of them in a line falling out of the cargo section, yeah, I could see that could cause an issue.
So according to SpaceX's website or some of the things I read here, they plan to put 60 in orbit every 2 weeks. So this is not going to be a once in a while thing. This is going to be an every 2 week thing. But I haven't seen a second launch since, we're actually due any minute now. I'd have to go see the launch schedules. So
something launched today, but I don't think it was payload, right?
I don't know, actually. But if you do the simple math of 60 into 12,000 at a 2 week interval, I think if I did my math right, it'll take 4 years at that pace to hit 12,000 satellites in the sky. Of course, unless they change pace to get 42,000 up there, it's going to take, 4 times that. So another 16 years total, right, to get all your satellites up there.
They're referring to it as a decade-long project and about $10 billion, which is actually really cheap.
Yeah, the cost is actually cheap if you ask me. However, once you get them all up there, astronomers are also claiming that it's going to take several thousand years for them to naturally fall back to Earth unless they purposely fly them to Earth to burn up in the atmosphere. So if you don't purposely fly them back and they just go dead, because I don't know what the lifespan of these are. A typical satellite, I think, only lasts about 20 years up in space. You're going to have a bunch of space junk, like you said, and it's going to get worse. So if we want to go to Mars, we want to go to the moon, we want to do something, it's going to be tricky. Now, astronomers have said, well, one day it would be nice to go to the far side of the moon so we can kind of get rid of other problems that are here on Earth, like looking at stars through the atmosphere. So maybe it's much ado about nothing. We do have Kepler. We do have Hubble, which is now out of commission officially, I believe. But you can only have so much observation time on, spacebound or moonbound astronomy things, where here on Earth you can just basically get a piece of glass and make some observations, right?
True.
All right, so
Bezos is planning on doing 3,236, by the way, their constellation.
So that takes me to my next point, Bob. This is just Elon Musk, and it's just America. What if China says, you know what? Y'all don't like playing with us. We don't like playing with you. Insert token statement about TikTok and Huawei. We're going to do 42,000 of our own. There you go. And oh, by the way, if we knock some of yours out of orbit while we're doing ours, shoulder shrug. So how does that work, Bob?
Well, luckily, there is an international organization that everyone has to apply to, I think, to get their projects approved. So China just can't throw a bunch of satellites up there. And I'm sure that they put them in a specific lane, like your guys have to be here. Now, of course, if Elon at 340 miles has basically an impenetrable dome, how's someone going to get past his to get theirs out there? Now, the poles aren't covered, though, right?
They are not, because there are some characteristics about orbiting Earth that you should be aware of. So the orbits that you can put things into highly depend on where you launch them from on Earth. And then you usually, I think it's like something weird, like 56 degrees is where you got to launch them so that they orbit correctly. And as a consequence of that, because if it's too shallow or too long, you actually won't cover all of Earth, because your satellite will just cover a small band, or it will just take forever to get around the Earth. And so there's different reasons for that. But one consequence is if you pick a trajectory that we normally use for like space shuttles and satellites that are not geosynchronous, you actually miss the poles. It's not that we don't have satellites that can't cover the poles. It's just that those are in totally different types of orbits. And so
right.
that's one consequence of that. So, Bob.
So do we change our launches to be closer to the poles? I don't understand.
Well, you don't really need to cover the poles because there's no population. So
No. But I'm concerned about like how you get a launch through because I'm also reading now that Boeing also is approved for 3,000 satellites as well.
So are you familiar with what a Dyson sphere is? This is really nerdy.
It's probably what that animation looks like for the Starlink, right?
Imagine we found a star, or we can take our own sun, and we built a sphere around our own sun. So, and it's so large that it encompasses the orbits of Mercury, Venus, and Earth, and maybe even Mars. So let's imagine that we have the technology to build such a mega structure that we can actually trap the sun's rays within a sphere. Tracking so far?
Yeah, that probably wouldn't be very smart.
Well, probably not. But we could then capture all the solar radiation onto the surface of the Dyson sphere. So one step below that is I don't know what it's called, but it doesn't have to be a dome, but it can be just imagine a belt around the Earth. Instead of a dome, it's a belt, and then you can place things. So essentially what we're kind of building is a Dyson sphere around the Earth to benefit and to not so good, because eventually it's going to become so solid, even though it's going to be, a bunch of small objects, it's going to be solid enough where it's going to be very difficult to launch anything. And Bob, historically, do we all as nations agree with what the UN says?
No.
So this international organization, does it somehow fare any better than the UN as far as controlling who gets to do what on the space stage?
I feel like it's such a wild, wild west that maybe they've got some reins on it right now.
Right. So it's a tenuous balance at best. So we have nuclear countries, we have non-nuclear countries. What do the non-nuclear countries typically want to be, Bob?
Nuclear countries.
Right. So I would imagine countries who are in control of global networks will want their own global network. Did you see recently that Russia signed into law where you have to have Russian-made apps now on your phones?
Oh, hey, that sounds like China.
Right. So to my point, Elon Musk is American, and it pretty much going to fall under, SpaceX is going to fall under the control and governance of the United States. Well, China may be like, hey, we want to do this. We want to have censorship. We want to do this. And then America's like, no, freedom. Conflict, right? So China launches their own, and this International Space Agency says, no, you can't do this because of this reason. And they say, you know what? Let's try and stop us. So I'm just predicting here in the future that we could just have this proliferation of space junk up in the sky pretty darn soon. What do you think?
Oh, well, it's already starting. So, I mean, you talk about, what was that number of satellites throughout all time? Was
8,900-ish.
8,900.
Yep.
So pretty much by the end of, probably by next summer, we'll be past that just with Elon's stuff.
And the reason I know this will happen is we talked early that it'll be for military use, Starlink, right? Because, spoiler alert, the U.S. military uses satellites for military. They also use commercial satellites for military because, well, once you use all your assets, you need more assets, you buy more assets. So imagine where we have armed conflict where the Chinese military, for some reason, decided to use SpaceX. Would the United States went to war with China, would we shut them off? You bet you we would. So therefore, why would China ever want to put any of its military assets on, a non-allied, network? So this is definitely happening. I think we're going to have the NATO Starlink, and we're going to have the not NATO Starlink. We're going to have the Russian Starlink. We're going to have the Chinese Starlink. And of course, India's like, hey, we want to play too. They're going to have the Indian Starlink, and the Brits will be like, hey, this is a great idea. But we have the Commonwealth and we're global. We need our own Starlink as well. So this is totally going to happen. Right. And then do you have Starlink with satellites like we're on version 0.91, version 2, they're going to have lasers to take out competing Starlink satellites. What do you think?
I think that would probably compromise the design and the build and the functionality. So I'm not taking this to Star Wars yet.
Well, to take out another satellite, all you have to do is basically make it hot, and then it burns up. And I don't mean like catches on fire, but it just overheats. So that's one of the tenuous things with these albedo and these thermal management is because when you're up in space, it's like 400 degrees below zero. And then you need it to be warm enough, but you don't need it to be too warm. And then you have cosmic radiation. You have the Van Allen belts. You got all these problems, up in space. It's not like it's like, oh, it's very easy to run. All you got to do is put it in orbit and it's really rugged. No, these things are like really fragile. So basically pointing a laser, and I'm talking not the Star Wars kind of laser, but we just need to focus energy on the bad guys or the other satellites, and then we'll take theirs out. And then, is that what future space war looks like?
It sounds like constant meteor showers to me. So
right, and now they, and what if China doesn't care about that they burn up 100% or not? Because their current thing, I read an article just the other day, they do launches of satellites, and then they could point the rocket over the ocean like we do for safety reasons. But what do you think China does, Bob?
They got a lot of empty land. They can just land it in the middle of nowhere.
They point that shit to the west in China, and the shit lands on buildings. And I saw an article where a rocket landed, like the pieces landed in some random town in China and just squashed a building. So do you really think they care if it burns up 100% or not, Bob?
No, but I pasted a link, or not a link. I pasted information about the ITU. I mean, they're going to have to follow regulations to put it up there.
Or else what?
They won't be permitted to do it.
So how do you stop them?
You use the power of the United Nations to shut down their program.
Oh my gosh. Do you really think China and Russia are going to give a shit if it compromises, if they look at it and go, hey, our military needs this?
I think they're both in the United Nations, though.
Oh, they are, but they're veto members in the United Nations, so basically they can tell each other to fuck off. So they're definitely in the United Nations. So what I'm saying is the ITU sounds great on paper, but in reality, when push comes to shove, how are you really stopping them short of going to war with them? I need an answer, Congressman.
I don't have an answer for that. I do feel like this is relatively uncharted territory. So.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Uncharted territory.
And I don't know if this is Space Race 2.0, where we all thought it was supposed to be putting people in space, but maybe it's putting infrastructure into space. Maybe that's the next space race. And
well, I think all the players that are getting into this, their objective is global, or one of their objectives is global broadband internet. So they're going to sell to whoever wants to buy. So
to a point, but if you're China, you may have that same ideal, but you also want to enforce censorship or data, surveillance or God knows what. And SpaceX could say, no, we won't allow that kind of thing. Politics start coming into play. So China, there becomes this conflict, and the ITU is full of people at NATO, and they're like, well, we can't trust the ITU, just how things spiral out of control.
Near as I can tell, China's fine with their amount of internet access.
Well,
they restrict what they have.
That could be. There'll be some asshole country. That's all I'm saying. One day, if we might be good.
And Russia will probably be in the same boat. I mean, they're very China-esque when it comes to those kind of things. So they might be perfectly fine with the internet they have.
Well, we will see. I think it'll come down to cost, and if SpaceX can put them up into orbit cheap enough, and China and Russia can't really afford that, then they just may say, that's whatever. We'll just stick with the 3 satellite model and be good.
Well,
with that.
I think where they're different at this point in time is that those nations don't have commercially viable space travel. where we do. Ours isn't funded by the government anymore. So they would have to catch up in that regard.
It's not funded by the government, but just like the NSA or the government can say, hey, encryption is considered a munition. You can't export this. They can say, hey, you cannot put Iranian nodes, ground-based nodes on Starlink because of sanctions, or pick a reason. It's just how conflict is. All conflict has to do with humans hating each other or power grabbing. So it won't take much. We're totally in uncharted territory. 100% agree. But I don't think it'll be long before we start having nationalized Starlink constellations up there. If you have the 3 satellites or even 15 satellites that are at 22,500 miles away, who really cares? But we're talking about low Earth orbit, and we're talking 42,000 just for the American version. Are you kidding me? So it's interesting. And
someone's going to be left sitting on the outer ring, which isn't ideal. So, eventually they're going to run out of vertical space that makes it worthwhile.
Because as a satellite node in your country, you look down, your signal's constantly being crossed by competing networks, right? So that would be pretty shitty.
Well, and you're going to end up not getting as much benefit because you're not in the lower ring. If 341 miles is as low as they're going to let people go, then all of a sudden Elon has the market cornered on lowest latency.
So a few years back, I don't know if you remember, China perfected a kinetic weapon to take out satellites. And they took out satellites that are at 22,500 miles away. So the Black Mirror episode that I'm envisioning here is China or America or whoever, Russia, has a satellite killer weapon. And all it has to be is a kinetic thing. You don't have to explode it. All you have to do is knock it out of orbit. And
right.
The whole physics thing will take care of the rest. So exciting times, right?
I feel like that's an issue that he's probably going to have to deal with, though, is because it is so low. People will probably be able to develop stuff that just pick them off.
And let's say China gets 40,000 satellites up there and they don't give a fuck, because you remember a couple years ago where we had this for a few days, hey, the Chinese space station is going to crash. We have no idea where. Here's where we might think, right? And so China doesn't give a fuck. So what happens if one of these 500-pound Chinese version comes and kills somebody in America because it was launched in China, but it fell because now there's 50,000 chances instead of one space station chance. There's 50,000 chances because they don't give a shit about it burning up or not, because they're like, ITU, yeah, whatever. Hey, we told them it's going to burn up, but it really doesn't. How do you test these things?
Dude, they'll be able to explain that away in the bat of an eyelash.
So who are you suing is what I'm saying.
How many people have been killed by satellites throughout the history of the world? This is just 5 people. It's fine.
Yeah. Well,
that many people die every day falling out of bed. So,
you'd be a good
but
lawyer.
That's what they'll do. That's how they'll explain it.
Totally.
More people die choking on a sandwich every day than by satellite.
we should probably have some thoughts on this. Some summarizing thoughts. So overall, I think Starlink is a cool concept. I think it's possibly going to bring satellite to places where it doesn't exist. That's all cool and great. I think it's kind of shitty that's putting a bunch of space junk up there. Now it sounds like they're mitigating that along some lines, but like reflectivity, it deorbits and it'll burn up just fine. But I think it really pisses off the astronomers, and it gives rise to this whole competing network thing. And so I don't know. I'm kind of. It's definitely a Black Mirror episode, but it's really happening. It's kind of like every other topic here on Bob and Kevin. What do you think, Bob?
I think the crazier thing is that we have these players that have all kind of put their virtual stake in the ground and saying, we want to do, a satellite constellation. I do too, and I do too. But all of a sudden, Elon takes a lot of heat for the things that he does, but damn it, he does what he says he's going to do. And he's the first one out there with an actual deployment. He has the means, both financially and technologically speaking, with his SpaceX rockets. He's basically running circles around everyone else that wants to do this. Because, Boeing probably has rockets, but Bezos doesn't. Like, how's he going to do it? Is he going to rent rocket time from, Elon to get his satellites out there? It's just very interesting to me that this seems like something that's very science fiction, yet it's already happening.
Totally. And so I think what you said is very, very true. First one to market here has a leg up for sure. And there's also a ton of power. If you have a global internet system that's floating above every country, think about just the surveillance that you can do, the intelligence or the signal intelligence you can do. At any point, you can kind of sniff the radio signals right under you. You saw the map. That's a significant amount of data coming in that you can then data warehouse and analyze, right? So there's going to be a power struggle, I think, because that's a powerful thing. And I really see China and Russia, a non-traditional U.S. ally, say, fuck that. We need our own thing, because we're already seeing that with TikTok and Huawei. So why would this be any different in my mind? Yes, there's this UN organization. Sounds great. That's the right thing. But if we look at how China, Russia, and U.S. get along at the UN, that doesn't look too promising. So interesting times. I would like to try it. That's for sure, especially if it's fast and reliable. But TBD. I don't see this being something I can actually purchase for another 2, 3, 4 years.
No, 18 months on the outside. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well,
you'll be able to have it up and running within a year in your place.
All it'll do is cost me a shit ton of money, right? It's kind of like the first It's like the first cell phone, right? Hey, this thing says I can have 30 minutes of talk time and 15 minutes of battery, so I have 2 batteries. This is awesome, right?
That's not how Elon does it, though. It's going to come at a very competitive price point, and he'll lose money on it until he gets the big players. Trust me.
I'm impressed. We can't let this episode go without talking Cybertruck. You've seen Cybertruck, right?
Yeah, I actually want to get one.
So I went to their website.
We don't have enough time for Cybertruck.
Okay. Well, just so you know, you can go to their website for $100 and place a pre-order. Yeah. It's fully refundable.
So, yep.
So Mr. Musk is a busy man. I commend him for doing what you're saying is say what you're going to do and then go do it. He's that kind of guy. So I'm 100% sure this is going to happen. I'm just 100%.
It's already happening. He sent a tweet connected to the network.
Well, that he can. When when this becomes ubiquitous, then it's happened in my mind.
Telling you, 18 months he'll have customers. Less than 18 months.
Well, they have customers to be space tourists, but nobody's up there yet. So people are paying money, but nobody's in space as a space tourist just yet. Just saying.
I'm calling it right now. This time next year, it will be a viable product.
All right. Let's see. This time next year, or you want the 18 months?
No. I'll go to this time. I'm getting ballsier as the minutes tick by.
Wow.
This time next year, it'll be a viable product that you and I could buy.
All right. Do you see any concerns with any of it?
Oh, tons.
All right. Just making sure. I didn't know. Sometimes I can't read you. So.
No, tons of concerns, but the ship's already left the barn. That's totally mixing metaphors, but yeah.
The rocket's left the stable.
Yep, the rocket has already left the stable.
All right. All right. What else did we forget here?
Well, we just probably need to thank everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep. Hey, I've got a stack of stickers here, and I'm willing to send some out at my forever stamp cost. All you have to do is get in touch with the show on one of our social media platforms, and we'll probably be all creepy be like, hey, what's your address? So I can mail this shit to you. And then Kevin will send it to you. It's kind of important. Yeah, it's kind of important. And then Kevin will mail it to you. From the flyover territory known as Indiana, it will come to your house. I probably won't send it internationally. Sorry. So America only for right now, because sending outside America is hard, I think, right? Have you ever sent anything overseas?
I'll send you a sticker. I'll send you a sticker internationally. Hit us up. We'll figure
All right,
it out.
Bob's going to cover the international costs, and Kevin will do the domestic. So there we go. Done. All right. We should probably end the show now.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Hey, have you ever wondered how you can get in touch with us at the Bob and Kevin Show?
Well, first, you can try us via email at comments@bobandkevinshow.com.
Or are you more into social? If so, you can find us on Twitter at Bob and Kevin Show.
Or on Instagram as Bob Kevin Show.
That's Bob, the letter N, Kevin Show.
And if you're still on Facebook, you can even find us at facebook.com/Bob and Kevin Show.
And for the serious business fans, you can even find us on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/company/the-Bob-Kevin-Show.
How's that for a handle? Let's connect.